Welcome to Simsbury Town News. My name is Dominique Avery. We're going to talk about two things today, the Simsbury budget process and the town's Hometown Hero Award. Here to discuss them, I'm happy to welcome back my two guests, our top two town officials, Maria Capriola and First Selectman Eric Wellman. Oh, Maria's the town manager. I neglected to mention that. I want to start with the Hometown Hero Award because I'm in no way a budget geek, and that's a lot more fun than the budget. Eric, let me start with you. How long have we been giving out this award?
So this has been going on since 1986 under Governor William O'Neill. This was, the state at the time was turning 350 years old. And as you know, Simsbury is turning 350 years old in May. So the timing is pretty neat. So we've been giving out this award ever since to residents who have really gone above and beyond the call of duty in giving back to the town that they live in.
So what kind of awards, what kind of heroism are we looking for here? Are we looking for the run into the burning building fireman kind of heroism, or just public service?
Well, possibly both, but really, in my experience, it's been people like yourself. I'm speaking with a former hometown hero. It's people who, I've been amazed by the number of people that are involved in so many different things, whether serving on the tourism committee, on the board of various nonprofit organizations like the Performing Arts Center, and volunteers really make up the backbone of this community. And so many of the things that we just take for granted are actually because of the very hard work and dedication of volunteers. And I see the Hometown Hero Award as a really nice way of recognizing especially those unsung heroes and giving them the spotlight.
Do you think, you're not from Simsbury, neither are you, do either of you think that Simsbury has more volunteers than other communities? Does it make it, living in Simsbury somehow, is there something in the water?
That's one of the things that really hit me in the face when I first started my political journey when I ran for First Selectmen. And having lived in a number of different places, Massachusetts, Ohio, and now Connecticut, I feel like Simsbury has a well above average amount of civic participation, a really rich civic fabric, and one of the things that makes our community very, very unique. I actually, in my opening speech when I was first sworn in as First Selectman, I referred to it as Simsbury's superpower, which I really believe it is.
So do you know when the award is given out, Maria?
Yes, so we give out the award in May. The last few years we have been doing that in advance of the second Board of Selectmen meeting at the end of May. And then we have an application process, so we will usually put out a call for nominations middle to end of March, and we'll accept nominations through the end of April. And then there is a committee that reviews the nominations, makes selections, and then we have that large ceremony in May.
So, and I actually read somewhere that it was given out in May on the date of our anniversary, our celebration. So this year it makes wonderful sense to have it on the exact day. I don't remember what date that was, but we can look into it. So how do people? So one of the things that I thought about, you sent me to prepare for this. I looked at the awards that were given out over the years, and I noticed in 1986 there were 40 plus people who got it. And last year or the year before, in some years there were just two. Mm-hmm. Why was so many given out before, and why are so few given out now? Do you have any thoughts about that?
So I can speak to I've served on the Hometown Hero Selection Committee for 2 years, so not a vast amount of experience, but in our 2 years, we've given the award to every person who we feel like, who has been nominated, who we feel meets the criteria and is deserving. It's not like we're going through saying, well, this person rescued a cat from a burning building, this person constructed the Veterans Memorial, we're going to give it to this person. We're going to give it to as many deserving, qualified people as we get. And I think when the number's higher or when the number's lower, it's driven by the number of nominations that we get. And that's exactly why we wanted to do this show. We wanted to start planting the seed in people's heads to think about who are those people that give back to their community in different ways, and then writing to us and telling us who they are.
Right. And then about 2 years ago, we tried to make the process a little easier for folks, and people can now go online and submit a nomination form online. Previously, we would only accept nomination forms in writing, either hand-delivered or through the mail, but we understand that people are incredibly busy, and the convenience of being able to submit a form online is tremendously helpful, and we encourage people to do that.
So when you begin the process, you'll put out something. If you send it to me, I'll put it on the Simsbury Tourism Facebook
Wonderful.
page as
Great.
well. You post on a regular basis,
Yeah.
so we can let people know.
Yeah, if people subscribe to our news and announcements, I'm sure we'll send out the link in news and announcements. If anyone doesn't know how to subscribe to news and announcements, just go to the homepage of the town website and you'll see a link, a button called News. And then you can sign up for any kind of news that you'd be interested in receiving.
So you were going to try and look for a hometown hero person to come and talk about. So you have any questions for me about how I felt about getting it, or should
I'd
I
love to
interview
know how you
myself?
felt
That'd be
about
great.
getting it.
Well, I think I got it because I was as the founder of the Bridge of Flowers. So I think that was the main reason, although I served on the recycling committee and I did for a year, I wrote a column about what could be recycled for the Valley News, whatever it was called at the time. And there, I got an award for that too.
Huh.
And I was on the Board of Ed for 4 years, and I've been on the tourism committee for, 10, 15 years. So I think it was sort of the sum total of stuff, but for the most part. And I was thrilled, because I've only been given 2 awards in my life for that recycling committee. Basically, I don't really seek thank yous, but I liked it, and my daughter and her husband came, and my infant grandson at the time came, and it was fun. I enjoyed it.
That's great.
And that's what I hear from other hometown heroes, that it's not something that they seek, it's not why they do the work. But I think saying thank you to amazing people who serve our town is so important.
I agree, and I certainly appreciated being thanked, but I want to say that I was sort of embarrassed because whenever I'm given the opportunity to talk and there's a microphone, I'll go to the microphone. And at the time we were trying to become we were participating, I believe it was that year, participating in the town's effort to become one of the top tourism towns in the state. And so I think it was that time that I put in a plug for people to vote for us.
Oh, I like
Anyway.
that. That's great.
All right, so we've talked about the hometown. Oh, one other thing I thought, you might, if somebody has time, to sort of post a list of the people who have gotten it in the past. If you have some way of creating a document, I think it might be interesting.
Sure, I believe it's on our website.
You do?
We do have a section of our website dedicated to the Hometown Heroes program, and we have a list of the former award recipients online, as well as plaque in Town Hall, and so we update that on an annual basis.
Oh, okay. So let people know where they can see the people who have won.
Yeah,
Right.
and I'm asked them from time to time, can someone be nominated or can someone receive the award twice? And I know of at least one person,
Ferg Jansen.
who's
Right.
gotten the award twice. And once it was in I believe the late 90s, and then again it was last year. And when we were debating whether he should get it twice, we realized that he put together a whole new resume of community service between the first time and the second time. It's just unbelievable.
Ferg Jansen, I mean, he deserves it multiple times, because if something gets done in town, you can be sure that Ferg Jansen had something to do with it. I mean, he's amazing. Okay, now to the budget process, which I really don't want to talk about.
There's no easy way to make that transition.
It's very early, so in the process, so maybe we could talk a little bit and prepare people for what is the budget process in Simsbury, and what does it mean, the budget process?
Sure.
Start from scratch.
Sure. So really a first step is what we call the tri-board meeting. So usually in either late November or early December, the Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, and Board of Finance will get together to talk about essentially goals for the upcoming budget season. And that was held in early December of this year, provided guidance to the superintendent and myself as we prepared our budgets. The superintendent has released his proposed budget, and I will be releasing my proposed budget on February 24th. At that point, the Board of Selectmen will really begin to dig into the budget, and we have an in-depth budget workshop scheduled for March 7th with them. That's a full-day session, and we'll go over both operating and capital budget items, as well as budget items that are really policy-driven sorts of questions. From there, the Board of Selectmen will adopt a budget that they feel comfortable with. That gets advanced to the Board of Finance. The Board of Education does a similar process. Their budget also gets advanced to the Board of Finance. Usually in April, the Board of Finance is holding public hearings on the budget. They will ultimately adopt a budget as well. That budget gets sent back to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen has the authority to send those questions, those budget questions, to referendum. Based on the timeline that we're looking at right now, budget referendum will likely happen probably around May 19th. So it's a rather lengthy process, but there are a lot of opportunities for the public to become informed, to be engaged, and to participate and provide feedback to us.
Okay, so I know that you've made this point before, Eric. There is some confusion about the town budget and the Board of Education budget and how each is reached and how each works. Can you explain how we do it and why we do it this way?
I don't know if I can get to the why, but I can get to tell you the how. So taking a big step back, for every dollar in taxes that our residents pay, about 75 cents goes to our schools. And our our school budget is really governed by the Board of Education, and the town budget, which pays for services such as snow plowing, our parks, our police, public works, all those kinds of things, is about a quarter of the taxes we pay, and that's determined by the Board of Selectmen. So really, what has struck me in the 2+ years that I've been in this seat is that when our residents are paying their taxes, they are paying their taxes to a single place. But in fact, it's really two separate boards that are determining how that money is going to be spent.
So you described what the process is for the Board of Selectmen, the town budget. Mm-hmm. What is the process, and when do people get to put in their 2 cents for the Board of Education budget? Do you know?
So there is a public hearing, and you said, did you give the date of the public hearing?
It's in April, and I don't have the specific date in front of me, but we do our best to try and publicize that date. So typically, we'll spread the word through news and announcements, as well as through our various social media accounts.
Yeah. I do encourage people, though, to, if you have feelings about the budget, reach out to us sooner. Maria, on Monday the 24th, is going to be sharing with us a concise version of her proposed budget, and that'll be the public's first chance at looking at it and responding to it. And if people have thoughts, I would highly encourage them to reach out to me by phone, by email sooner, because oftentimes when we get to that public hearing, I always appreciate the people who turn out, but at that point, it's fairly late in the process to make substantial changes.
All right, but I was trying to get at how people can learn about the Board of Education budget and when they can put their 2 cents in. Do you know how that process works? And because if 75% of our budget is the Board of Education budget and only 25, is that what you said, 25% or something?
So the Board of Ed budget is discussed at public meetings, and I think that any member of the Board of Education would welcome members of the public reaching out to them. But there is no formal meeting for the public to give their input until that public hearing, although members of the public can always come to our meetings and speak in public audience.
Can they speak about the Board of Education at your?
They can speak about anything they want in 5 minutes, yeah.
All right, so why are the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen's budgets done this way? Why is there not one oversight, one town oversight over? Is that state law or town law, or do other towns do it that way?
Sure. It's a bit of both state and local law. So we do have a charter for Simsbury, and that charter has a very prescribed budget process for us. So Much of what is in our budget process is derived from our charter, but there are some state statutes that do affect the Board of Ed and their budgeting process. So, for example, the Board of Finance does not have the ability to cut individual line items within the Board of Education budget. They can only either reduce or increase the bottom line. So that's a key difference between the town budget and the school budget.
So the town budget, the Board of Finance can say they don't like one of your line items?
So we
Exactly.
might have set aside, I'll speak to an issue near and dear to your heart, we might set aside $5,000 to the tourism committee for marketing materials. And in theory, the Board of Finance could put an X through that. Whereas with the Board of Ed budget, they can nix it or they can accept it, but they can't go through line by line.
So that gives the Board of Finance a lot of power over the town budget and very little power over the Board of Ed, the details of the Board of Ed budget.
Yeah, as a result, they really dig into the details more, I believe, of the Board of Selectmen budget than the Board of Ed budget.
So
for that reason.
Yeah, so they might cut out the $5,000 for brochures for the tourism committee, but something equivalent in the Board of Ed, they wouldn't have any control over that. They wouldn't even know about $5,000 for brochures for the Board of Education.
So it's my
for instance.
opinion that they'd be less likely to ask those questions for that exact reason. I play a game with kids who come to my office to meet me, where I set out a whole bunch of cups and I set out about 100 chips. So our total budget is a little over $100 million. And I say each chip is $1 million. And I say, guess how many chips go into the police bucket? And we put about 5 in the police bucket. Guess how many go in the parks bucket? We put a few in the parks bucket. And then we get to the school bucket. Guess how many chips go in there? And we basically take out the backhoe and pour them in. It's an overflowing cup. And it makes, I think, a really, it's poignant. And then I tell them, guess which of these cups the Board of Finance spends more time digging into. And it's the little cup instead of the really big overflowing cup. And it's precisely for that reason, because they have a line item veto power over the town budget.
All right, so we've now said this a couple of different ways, but it hasn't penetrated my brain. Is that state legislation that the Board of Finance can't have it, or is that town charter?
I do believe that's state.
It's state.
Yeah.
So there's not much we can do about it unless and that's to protect education, that's to protect towns that don't want to spend money on education, probably.
That, and I was going to say, there's also the state has a minimum budget requirement.
Which is to protect education. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. And by the way, I just want to be very clear, if there's any members of the Board of Finance watching, I think the Board of Finance is an important check on the balance of powers. And it's really their job to look at how the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen are using taxpayer dollars and making sure that we keep the mill rate as reasonable as possible. And in my time here, they've played that role exceptionally.
They've done a good job,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky to have the people we have on the Board of Finance,
We
that they
are.
want to even do it. I'm always surprised. Of course, I'm not good with so it's not my thing. So there are two budgets. There's the operating budget and the capital budget. And there may be people out there who don't know the difference. Can we talk a little bit about those two budgets and how they're determined?
Sure,
We're
absolutely.
talking about the town budget now.
Sure. So our operating budget is really what funds our day-to-day services. So a lot of our staffing costs are in the operating budget: police officers, librarians, our social workers, our programs, our services. So that's really what the operating budget is. Our capital budget, we do have a similar sort of budget development process for that, but that's focusing more so on our capital assets, our infrastructure. So things like our roads, our parks, the sidewalks, playgrounds. Those are the types of things, our fleet, the large plow trucks, our police cruisers, those types of items are capital. So we do have a separate budgeting process for those items, but it's very similar.
So looking ahead to this year, as you begin the budget process, what are some of the key revenue drivers for the upcoming year?
Sure. So we had a remarkable grand list growth for this upcoming year. We're looking at about a 2.6% increase and our growth. For a non-revaluation year, that's just really phenomenal. Most of our towns in the region saw grand list growth of about 0.5% to 1%. And again, we were at 2.6. That's really outstanding. It will definitely help to minimize tax increases. In my upcoming proposed budget that will be released, the mill rate will essentially be flat or potentially a slight decrease. Again, so that new growth revenue is just phenomenal. A lot of that was derived from some personal property tax increases we're seeing from the Tobacco Valley Solar Project coming online. About 85% of that project came online for the upcoming grand list. And then in real estate, a couple of the substantial projects that contributed were the Anthology Assisted Living Facility and the Ridge at Talcott Mountain.
Okay, so now people will raise the issue if you have a 2% growth, but do we have an equivalent 2% growth in operating budget, like for the schools? Are there a lot of kids coming from those new residential places?
Sure. So I would feel probably less comfortable speaking to that particular issue about school enrollment. But the overall manager's proposed budget, superintendent's proposed budget, and again, what we're looking at for an increase there versus the growth in the new growth revenues, mill rate at this point will probably be flat or a slight decrease over current fiscal year. And again, that's really due to the growth in revenues. It sounds pretty good, the town's economic health at this point. Yes, no?
Yes. So in the last budget year, and perhaps Maria could speak to this, there were some structural challenges with the budget that had to be corrected. Those have been corrected. We made the tough decisions we had to make last year. So now going into this year, we're in a much better position. And I think we're in a stronger place to talk about what are some of the things that our community is going to need, looking out over the next few years, and take advantage of the fact that we've had that growth. Connecticut towns, in my opinion, are at a real disadvantage because we are so reliant on property taxes in order to fund the services that people rely on. And I think Maria can speak to her time working in the city of Savannah, where they had more of a buffet of options.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In Connecticut, it's a real challenge, the reliance on the property tax, and it is a regressive form of taxation. But we have very little ability to diversify our revenue base at the local level. And what you see in many other states is local governments have the ability to levy taxes and fees really based on sort of community needs. And when I had worked in Georgia, a couple of examples were the local governments, you had the ability or the option to levy a tax or a fee, if you will, on cell phones. And so there was a small monthly charge on your cell phone bill that funded the E911 infrastructure. So all that dispatch equipment and communications and the infrastructure that went along with that.
And Connecticut doesn't allow that.
We do not have that ability. So that's just an example of a very sort of, again, small monthly fee that helped fund a very significant and expensive piece of infrastructure, but that takes pressure off of the property tax.
How about a hotel tax?
Right.
Can't do that, right?
Right. The local governments do not have the option and the ability to levy a local hotel tax or a local meals tax or a local sales tax specifically for funding capital projects. That was another option that we had in Savannah, again, when I was working in Georgia. So again, other states have given local communities the ability to diversify their revenue base so they aren't so reliant on the property tax, and we just don't have that ability here in Connecticut.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that has really struck me in the 2 budget cycles that I've been through is really how tight the budget is and how much of our budget is based on pre-existing obligations such as union contracts, healthcare costs, and those other drivers. And really the amount that is quote-unquote discretionary is so relatively small compared to that larger number.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So so many of the services that we provide, we're providing those services because we're either required to by the federal government, the state government, perhaps our charter requires it. So in terms of discretionary programs and services, it's a very small amount of what we actually do and provide to our residents.
So we're really in a bind.
Absolutely.
We have just a few minutes left. You told me that we recently got a AAA bond rating. I don't know what that means. I know it's good.
very
I don't
good.
know what it means.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So I guess the difference is, what's the level that's under AAA, AA, something like that? I know there was a little bit of analysis done to figure out over 10 years, the difference between AAA and the next lowest rating is about $100,000.
I think so, in
don't want to put you on the
bonding
spot
costs. Yeah.
there. But it basically means we can borrow money
borrow
less
money, right.
expensively. And am I allowed to share the news that we just got?
Oh, about the, yes.
So we found out that we were able to borrow money at basically a 1.5% interest rate, which is unheard of. And it's, I go back and I commend the Board of Finance and former boards of selectmen who had the wisdom of sound financial management throughout the years that helped put us in this position.
Well, unfortunately, I've gotten the signal that we have to wrap up. So
No,
thank you so yes.
I can keep going. All right.
I want to especially thank my guests, Maria Capriola and Eric Wellman, for joining me. As usual, it's been a pleasure. Thanks to the folks here at SCTV behind the scenes for getting the show on the air, Karen Hanville, the station manager, and Patrick Fallon, the operations assistant. And finally, thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of the show, you can always find it on our website at simsburytv.org. And just a reminder, SCTV provides an incredible service to the community by televising town government meetings, but it does it on a shoestring and depends on volunteers. And right now it especially needs volunteers to record town board and commission meetings on the remote cameras in Town Hall and at the Simsbury Public Library now. If you're interested or want to know more, contact Karen at 860-658-1720 or Karen at simsburytv.org. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for Simsbury Town News.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.